In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 198 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is Together. Our quote of the day comes to us from Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. It is my pleasure to bring you today's episode. Our guest is quite an impressive woman that is paying it forward in her own way by helping others reclaim their lives. From her podcast to her coaching, speaking, and even her events, Tracy Clark is making a positive difference. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Tracy, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I appreciate it. So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
I am always ready to bring it. That's how we get to our next level.
That is true. It's the only way to get there. So, as you know, the number one objective of our show is to both motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you had either a no-quit story of your own or perhaps a really challenging time where you could have given up, but you didn't.
You know what? I'll keep it short, but I actually had my third near-death experience. I was born very, very sick, and the doctors really gave me no more hope. And so I literally had to come to terms with how I was going to change my life, dig deep, and I knew only I could do it. And it was at that moment that I had to start really looking at ways of living, new ways of living, reclaiming my life, taking it back. Or I knew if I didn't make that change, I would leave my two little kids behind without a mother. And so that was my driving factor, was how am I going to restore my health, my life, and the way that I see and perceive things. And I couldn't stop. And I think if anybody's listening, so often we become challenges. I call them valleys. But if you really understand that you're in charge, and even if you don't see what you think you're wanting to see right away, keep going and don't give up, because had I given up, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today, and my kids wouldn't have a mom. And I think it's really important people understand you're in charge of your life, nobody else.
No, I think that's such great advice. So wanted to ask you, during those tough times, and obviously I can't put myself in your shoes per se, but was it something that you were reading? Was it something that you were putting in your mind, in front of your eyes? What kept you, as you say, in those tough valleys?
Yeah, what kept me going is a lot of research, a lot of asking questions, a lot of going, okay, everything doesn't work the way I've been taught. So I sometimes say it might take you into the crazy camp, but I was willing to dig deep and start to read things that were out of my paradigm, ask questions with things I didn't understand. How can I change my body? How can I change the way I'm living? How do I get the courage? And it was a lot of reading, a lot of asking, and I had to step out of what I knew. And that's how I ended up in basically the energy work I do today. Was I had to really go into the science of what is my body telling me and why.
No, I love that. And I think what you said is it's so on point, is you had to step out of what you knew. And I think, we all see those images and things all over social media, which talks about the comfort zone and where people are consistent and where they know where things are and what it's going to be. And I think that's such obviously a comfortable place to be. You know the top, you know the bottom, and you kind of stay in the middle. But hearing some of these amazing stories from some of the incredible guests we've had, it's all predicated on getting out of that quote unquote comfort zone, or it's going way past your limits, or taking fear and throwing it to the side. And I appreciate you touching on that. And you said something which hits us at home. It's asking questions, it's doing research, and doing a lot of reading. And I think for me, knowledge is power. And obviously, depending on who we all follow on social media, different platforms, everybody that I personally look up to looks at improving and growing. And it doesn't always mean an actual book. It could be conferences, it could be workshops, it could be audio, video. But wanted to just take a sidestep for a minute and just ask if you wouldn't mind just to tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you are doing today.
Yeah, awesome. You know what? I am the creator and founder of what I call the body regeneration method, which was actually influenced by my own ability to restore and regenerate my own body. So I combined science, spirituality, and ministry, because it is not about religion at all. It is about understanding how your body works, the connection. And by reading, asking, learning, studying, I restored and repaired my own body, which then when you actually understand what your body's telling you, guess what happens? Then you understand why the law of attraction works or doesn't work. You understand creation. You understand your relationships get better. Then your finances get better. Your health gets better. And then that's how your life starts to change. And it is, because it's really scary, like you said, to keep going when you have to learn something different. And it wasn't easy. And I'm really tired of people saying, oh, it's so easy. It's not, because you're going to go against the grains of your friends and family that want you to stay stuck. But I teach people how to get through that, how to work through it with more ease and grace, and what their body's actually telling them, so you can actually walk into a different paradigm, a different way of living.
No, I appreciate you. That was definitely better and a lot more said, a lot easier and a lot better than I would have read in your bio. So I appreciate you touching on that. And wanted to ask you, Tracy, if you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what would that word be?
Wow. You know what? That's a hard one for me, because depending on who I'm talking to, but inspirational would have to be the word.
I love that word, and what I know of you and in our brief relationship so far, I think that probably hits it on the head. So speaking of being someone who's inspirational, one of the questions we'd like to dig into is how somebody defines success, or what does success look like to them. So I wanted to pose that same question to you.
I love that question, because I think it's so misunderstood. And success to me is literally what I call living an authentic life, because I didn't live one. I wore a lot of masks and I was trying to fit in. And there was nothing better than really having peace and inner peace and calm, and really having my inner power back. And to me, that is full success. And when you have that, you can actually go out and inspire and help other people get it. And to me, that is more important than anything else in the world, is having that peace inside. So when you walk out every day, no matter if it's a great day or a challenging day, you know how to handle something better because you have that. And that would be my ultimate. And having achieved it now, there's not a better feeling.
No, I think that's such a great question that we ask. And the reason I say that is because there is no right or wrong answer. And what success looks like or feels like for you obviously can be different or identical to me. So I appreciate you touching on that. One of the things we've identified with our show is the importance of either a daily or a morning routine. And I was curious if you have a morning routine that you swear by.
You know what? I do have a morning routine. I have a reset tool that I teach all of my clients around the world that I do. But also, before I get up in the morning, I'm not someone that's going to want to grab your phone. I actually sit there and do my intentions, my version of it, how I do it, my asks for the day. And then I have this great tool I do where it's sort of fun. I call it casting the golden net, where I actually see and visualize casting that net into bringing into my body, into my energetic field of what I actually am working on creating. And I'll tell you, it manifests really fast. So I spend a little bit of time. And in that, it's always your gratitude as well. And I believe it's important to not only have your morning routine, but I do the same thing at night, to be very in gratitude for what is unfolded in the day, no matter what it looks like.
You know, it's interesting that you touched on the AM and the PM routine. Is I think that's something that I've really enjoyed getting an opportunity to interview some of the guests we had. Is so many different people have their similar morning routines, and I don't in any way want to say that they're identical, but they're similar because they touch upon usually some type of affirmations or intentions or gratitude. Obviously, there's the physical component, there's the health piece, but so many people in the last probably 3 to 4 months have spoken about the importance of your morning actually begins the night before. And what I realized about that is I equate it to my sports background is you can't wake up and have a really great practice one day and then have a game that night and come out and do great. It doesn't mean you need to do something for 4 months straight before you could have a good game. But I look back at my college playing days and before that, even in high school, is you have a good 3, 4, 5, 6 practices. The night before a game, you have a good hitting session, or you shoot the ball well for basketball. And I think for me, I didn't really understand that how the night before it starts your day. And you also touched on something that has been really important to me, and I probably say I'm about 50-50 with it, but not picking up the phone first thing. And the other component is I've heard this from many guests, is you can pick up your phone, but you have to be specific to what you do. So for example, there are people that use meditation apps. There are people that have different gratitude apps where they go on and they type out what it is, as opposed to going on and someone said to me something interesting and said, Chris, just because you physically have your phone, it's no different in some ways than a journal or a book. It's only if you go ahead and open up your email or your social media. So I'm glad you touched on that, because for me, it's something that I think is really important. And the reason we asked that question is to teach our listeners that there are different styles out there. And I love that you touched on your specific thing, and I love your intentions and how you talked about casting your net. In essence, everybody knows what fishing is. So I think that's a pretty cool analogy you used.
Yeah. And you know what? It's been proven by science. I don't know if your listeners know this, but you're talking about exactly in the evening or in the morning. If you start to run, like say sports, like you were talking about, what that routine would look like for you the night before in the morning, your brain actually and your mind start to reset into the strength of the body. So you will actually perform better in whatever you're doing if you actually take a few minutes and run that through your brain the day before. And for people, they found athletes that actually do this every day, they actually perform 20% or more better.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned that study, because I was reading a book and I forget the name of it now, but they were talking about the exact same thing in regards to Olympians and how they visualize, for example, running their race, and they do it in their head so many times. Obviously, they put in the effort physically on the court or in the rink or on the field, but they've also run that race or hit that ball so many times. And I forget which professional golfer many decades ago, but he was talking about not only how many times he actually physically hit the golf ball, but he said, do you know how many more times I've actually hit it in my head? And I remember thinking to myself,
yeah,
I didn't understand the power of visualization to the consistency of doing it over and over and over again, and then doing it physically as well.
Yeah, and then also, so your action, and then also feeling what it feels like to hit that ball, for instance. You'd be feeling what it feels like, and that frequency of that feeling actually is what draws it in quicker to your reality, and you'll perform better. Yeah, it's a great study.
No, and I think it's really interesting when you take it to the extent of your actual thing, whether that's hitting a ball or writing a book, or as you and I do, host podcasts and things. So speaking about podcasts, wanted to just ask if you wouldn't mind just quickly telling our listeners a little bit about your show.
Yeah, mine's the Tracy Clark Show, and we're on 90 outlets, but it's featured on Transformation Talk Radio. And every week, it's either a call-in show with me, or we bring guests on. And what I like to do is really have our listeners understand a lot about what their body's telling them, to allow them to see different paradigms, to keep them motivated, to keep them shifted, uplifted, and also to really teach people how and why it's so important to have a strong connection. And whatever that is to anybody, there's no right and there's no wrong. So we work very hard, I guess, to really let people understand how we pull back old paradigms, old belief systems, so people can become empowered, motivated, uplifted, but also really be brave to take those next steps, and things that they can do to take those next steps while they're maybe leaving or transitioning something that isn't working for them. So very, very much love to be able to have people learn how to reclaim their life. And I always say go from unhealthy and unhappy to healthy and happy, so you can actually live the way you're supposed to, not the way you were conditioned to.
No, I love that. And I think it's goes along with redesigning your life, but I love the term reclaiming your life. Before, when you were talking about your valleys, you talked about learning and reading and doing research. I wanted to ask you, as we're always looking to add to our listeners, if there's anything that you're currently reading or perhaps you might have read recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Yeah, I'm actually always reading something new. But recently, I started to read a book and I did have him on my podcast quite a while ago. And I should say, recently, in the last 2 months. But The End to Upside Down Thinking, which I love for people that don't understand energy, connection, intuition, because he's an investment banker, Mark Gober, who went from basically thinking that the world was, we're here to pay taxes and kind of just die, to really learning the science behind life and where all the proof is. And so I really love it because I'm rereading it actually right now, because I love understanding and seeing where there is science behind things that people think are hooey and wooey, because they're really not when you understand it. And that's a great book right now if anybody hasn't picked it up, because it really shows you this old paradigm to the new paradigm with proven facts if people don't understand how they can actually change their life.
No, I have not heard of that book, so I appreciate that.
Oh, you'll love it. If you haven't, I would highly recommend it.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself one piece of advice, what would that advice have been?
Oh, you know what? To trust in myself. Stop listening to everybody else and trust in what I was feeling, and to just keep going. And no matter who was being negative or why, that had nothing to do with me. It would really be to just trust in what I was feeling and take action on it.
I love that last part is the action. I think that's something that people miss often. And I know in my life, I had thought about things and written down, but there's a big disconnect between actually thinking and actually doing. So I'm glad you touched on that. If I had the ability, Tracy, to give you a dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would you pick and why?
You know what? I don't even have an answer for that, because I would actually probably pick my children, and I have dinner with them all the time. Yeah, it's not for me. I don't have gurus or masters. I just like life to flow, and they're the most important people in my world. And when I'm learning at different times, I would have probably told you 10 years ago, oh, I'd like to meet, Tony Robbins or someone, or because I was on that path, right? Today, I probably would say the Christ or Yogananda or Buddha, like people that aren't here. So I think it's a great question, but depending where I am in my world, it changes on a very regular basis.
No, and it's really neat that you said that, because I have the same answer in regards to depending on where I am. So when I was both playing and coaching college basketball, it definitely would have been somebody different. Before I got into podcasting, I definitely would have been somebody after. So I think that's interesting. And it goes back to the goals concept too, is people are always changing their goals, and not that you need to change them every hour or every day, but the reality is when people have the same goals year in and year out, you realize that maybe they're more so dreams than goals. So I think that's really cool that you touched on that. One of the things we talk about often with No Quit Living is our pay it forward mission, and we're always looking to pay it forward to others. So I just wanted to ask you, what does that phrase mean to you?
You know what? I think what it means to me, and I teach this each and every day, is that you are constantly giving. I don't care if it's your time or your money or your knowledge, everywhere you go and everyone you're talking to and touching. And no matter even if it's buying a coffee or it's having to lend somebody a hand. I know in my own company, we pay it forward to a lot of people in our community and children. We're starting a children's foundation to help them start to become more aware of what's happening, especially with all of the things they're dealing with today, social media bullying. But basically take the knowledge you have, and I say everywhere you walk, everywhere your hands touch, your feet go, there's some way that even a little compliment can change somebody's world, or opening a door where you see them struggling can change somebody's world. And it doesn't have to be just your money. A lot of people think that, but I think it has to be a combination of your money and your time and your wisdom.
I love that, and I think it's so important that you touched on. It doesn't have to be money, and it doesn't have to be something huge. It could be something like coffee. It could be something everywhere you touch, and every person you potentially interact with. We haven't spoken about this on the show yet, but we're actually last week we just embarked on a pay it forward positivity mission, and by that what we're doing is there's a bunch of ambassadors, friends of mine, people that help out and work within No Quit Living, where we're actually taking our stationery and we're writing a positive or inspirational quote, and we're actually putting it on under the windshield wipers on cars, and we're having different people do it. And the reason, very simple, is it doesn't cost time and money. It takes literally a minute total. If you don't have the quote, maybe it takes 2 minutes, but it's something that you pay it forward. And the reason why we're doing it, ironically, on underneath the windshield wipers is because that's where people get tickets. So their first inclination is, oh, did I get a ticket? And they go over and all of a sudden, and the reason that we're doing it there is everybody looks under their windshield wipers because they do assume it's a ticket. And if you don't pay a ticket, eventually the fine will double or triple. So I think it's almost reverse psychology in some ways. But I'm really glad that you touched on the children component, because there are so many issues and challenges, not just the bullying, but other things where kids are seeing other kids and the best of the best online, and whether it's grades or sports, and it's just a very different world. And I think for us with our show is we always look to connect with one person, one listener on each show. So I'm really glad that you spoke about that, because I think it's important. And wanted to ask the follow-up question is, the thing we talk about all the time is accountability. And on the back of our apparel line and everywhere and almost everything we do is #accountability. So I wanted to just ask you, Tracy, what does accountability mean to you?
It means actually showing up to me in your truth each and every day and following through on that. It doesn't mean that you're not going to, say, oh, I'm sorry, I have to change that or something's happened, but to really live in your truth and know that your truth is going to change how your perception changes, but to be present, to be aware, and to really follow through with what your words are, and be careful what your words are, because they're power. And so really being authentic and who you are each and every day. And that is going to mold, and that is going to change the more you learn. But to be accountable, you need to follow through. You need to show up and be in your truth of who you are.
I love that. The show up and the follow through is so important. I know we could talk about books and different things probably for hours on end, but being a big quote guy myself, I was curious if you have a favorite quote.
Yeah, it's actually mine. I always say we go together, we grow together. And I say it all the time. We go together, we grow together, because in this world, we can't do anything by ourselves. And when we're together, the power of numbers, especially when we're working to change and uplift, is life-changing when you have that support behind you.
No, I think that's a great quote. And I wanted to get your perspective in regards to mentors and the word mentor. And I was curious if you've had a mentor or you have mentors still in your life. And also, are you have anybody that you're mentoring as well?
Yeah, you know what? I have a lot of people that I take under my wing and help. And I've always had people throughout my life at different times. When I had my first business very, very young, I had a great lawyer and a great accountant that was giving me, advice. That's what I needed at that time. And then as I got older, I developed different mentors that were in the business realm that I was looking for, where you could ask questions and grow, and they would get you out of your comfort zone. And I really believe that we all need them. I have a new one right now that's obviously I'm learning this whole back end. We were talking about with social media, and that's all new. But they're there to encourage you and uplift you and empower you, because sometimes when you're building and moving, we all are going to have those down days. So I think it's extremely important that we have people in our lives constantly that are helping us. And it can even be your partner in life that can help you to uplift you. But you need somebody to bounce something off that's going to be truthful with you and going to be honest with you, so you're willing to make the change.
No, I couldn't agree more with that. And some of the people that I look up to, both personally and professionally, and even on different platforms of social media, they have people that, and maybe they call them different things, maybe sometimes, and I often talk about accountability partners, and some people might refer to them as mentors or coaches, but some people that I know that I personally look up to, when I hear interviews or or podcast interviews or videos of them, I hear that they say something that was almost similar to you is along my career or after college or before college, I had this person, that person. And I think it's really neat that you have people that help you along the way. But the flip side of the karma concept is I feel that everybody that's been successful has failed multiple times, but they've had so many people that have helped them along the way. And
yes,
the only requirement is not a monetary requirement. It's literally turning around and saying, okay, now I'm going to help this person. And it doesn't have to be someone in the same field. It could be someone that just, you connect with. And so if I could just empower our listeners, it would be, figure out maybe thinking about a mentor or an accountability partner that maybe will help you get to that next level. And it doesn't need to be business. It could be personal. It could be relationship. And as you said, it could be spiritual as well.
Yeah, accountability partners are huge. And, because it does make you think, oh, I've got to check in with this person and make it fun. If I can say to anybody, we're just learning. We're on a journey. We're all going to fall down. We've all made a ton of mistakes. We didn't get to where we are by not falling down. And that was one of my biggest, one of my mentors in business who's very, very well known. He said, I failed so many times, but I don't look at it as failure. I look at it as what do I need to learn to better myself? And I love that he used to say that all the time. I love it.
No, I think that is so important is failure is an event, not a person. Zig Ziglar said that. And I think that's something that we way too often miss is you look at a missed sale or missed business opportunity or failed relationship and you look at it, or people look at it in general as being a failure. But the reality is you're not a failure. You just failed at that one thing. And then the next time you attempt it, you'll be better, you'll be stronger, you'll be smarter. So I think it's really important. I wanted to ask you an interesting question. It might be a challenging question, but what is your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge right now is learning all this social media back end. That's my biggest challenge. I think sometimes what it is actually right now, because I've been in a massive growth and I'm a very big proponent of really you can never have balance in life. I don't believe in that. You can have harmony, right? So everything will flow. Because one time your business may need more attention, your relationship, whatever it is. So I say harmony. But so right now, because I am in such a massive growth, it's been creating and bringing back the harmony to make sure, because I'm very big on making sure everybody gets what they require, but to also make sure I get that time. So I've been a little bit out of harmony lately on that. And, but it's coming back, and it's just a matter of knowing that sometimes you have to put a little more attention in one place and to be just forgiving with self. And I'm very good at that now. I never used to be, but just making sure that harmony stays, because when you're building very quickly, there's sometimes things that require your attention and it doesn't allow you to be in that space that you can normally be in to create. Yes.
I want to touch on something you just said is forgiving with self. I wanted to just ask if you wouldn't mind just touching on that for a minute.
Yeah, I think as we sometimes get out of alignment, what's going on in our life, we beat ourselves up, or we can become too hard on ourselves, or, oh, I should have done it this way, or I should have done it that way. And, what I learned and I practice is self-forgiveness is huge, because there's no shoulda, coulda, wouldas. It's you did the best you could with the knowledge you had at that time, and to just be more kind to self and more gentle and understand it is a process. It is a journey. If you're taking action, you're doing the best things you can do. Forgive yourself and be in kindness to who you are. It'll make life so much easier.
I love that. And on probably 4 of our last 5 or 6 different episodes, people have shared in some way the idea and concept of being kind to yourself. And I think that's something that gets missed and you see all over social media, people talk about being nice and paying it forward and helping others. But a lot of the times you need to kind of listen to your own advice. And I'm saying that in general terms, because I think, like you said, is if you know when you wake up in the morning and you go to bed at night that you gave your best effort, it doesn't mean that you're undefeated and you have a perfect day. But if you miss a shot, or you don't have a great meeting, or maybe you were short with somebody, but if you know that you tried hard and you owned up to it, it's okay to forgive yourself. It doesn't mean you get excited when you lose a business deal or you have a tough meeting, but what it means is that you say, okay, I'm going to learn from this. So I'm really glad that you said it that way. And when you touched upon forgiving with self, and also how you talked about balance versus harmony, that's something that I don't think people hear enough. So I appreciate that. And wanted to ask you, Tracy, what's the best way for our listeners to connect or follow you or find out more about you and all the incredible things you're doing?
Thank you. TracyLClark.com. That's my website, TracyLClark.com. And all my social media tags are on there. So Instagram, YouTube, Facebook is there, but Instagram and YouTube. My podcast is there. So you can connect with me on iTunes, Spotify as well. So everything is there. So that's probably the easiest way for them to understand more about me and what we do.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And for any of our listeners, I'm connected with Tracy on Instagram as well. So you can just click on my page too to follow her. But again, it's TracyLClark.com. And then Tracy, wanted to ask you if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Yeah, if I could leave one thing is just to really remember that you're here for a reason. You matter and you're important, and don't ever quit. Don't give up. Keep going. If you have that burning need and you know inside you that it's time for things to change, to listen, go for it, ask for those right people to show up and take action when they do, because every one of us are here for a reason.
No, that is great advice, and that follows along with so many things we talk about. So I truly, truly appreciate not only your time, but everything you share with us, and I hopefully look forward to talking with you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be able to be here with you today.
Thank you for listening to episode number 198. As we are fast approaching our 200th episode, it was an honor to connect with Tracy. I love her quote that you shared with us today. We go together, we grow together. So simple yet incredibly powerful. We can always do more, give more, learn more, and be more together. Tracy discussed how during her valleys in her life, that's when you need to ask questions, do your research, and get out of your comfort zone. One thing Tracy touched upon was the importance of not only forgiving ourselves, but also the need to be more kind to ourselves as well. So where do you stand with your peaks? Do you ask questions and try and learn? Or perhaps do you find fault and point fingers? The reality is that in life we all fail, we will all make mistakes, and at times we all fall down. But we need to get back up, and the best way to do this is together and with a positive attitude. Remember that love wins, and love always trumps hate. As you go for your greatness today, do it together, for others, and do it with both a positive approach and a positive attitude. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.